Hello, my dears. Happy Friday. I'm excited to be with you all today and chatting about making progress more fun and even a little bit sexy. And I have to admit, originally when I said the word sexy, I wasn't literally mean sexy, but then I remembered something that actually is a little bit of a truly sexy way to use mapping. And I'm going to tell you about that a little bit later. But first, I just wanted to share the inspiration for this week's chat. It actually started with a conversation that I had with another mapper last week. And she and I were talking about a financial goal that she had. And she was looking to save up enough living expenses for 3 months, right? Which is an amazing thing. But honestly, a lot of us haven't even known what that's like. But she's really committed to taking charge of her finances and being a grown-ass woman who takes care of herself. And those are all wonderful things. So anyhow, she and I were talking about ways that she could create a momentum and sustain that toward her financial goals. Any of us have a financial goal, especially ways to have it go better or go faster are usually welcome. So that's what I wanted to kind of share about the conversation that I had with her, because when we were done, I asked her what the most useful thing was. And she said, well, thanks for helping me see how I could incorporate mapping my financial goal more into my everyday life and have it be something that's fun and a little bit sexy, meaning interesting, meaning a little bit exciting, even something that you are excited about doing. So whatever your goal is, be it financial, or maybe you have some goal related to your physical fitness or movement, well-being, creating a new habit, whatever your goal is, I implore you, please do not make it a grind. Do not put yourself in a position where you are just pushing through and doing what you should be doing and doing it the right way, whatever that is. I really encourage you, as I would encourage any of my clients. I'm a progress coach, and so some of you I work with privately. And this is a conversation that I have with everyone that I work with. It's how can we make the pursuit of your goal, whatever it is that you're going after, be more enjoyable in the process. Couple reasons for that. One, we're human creatures, and so we tend to respond better to things that we enjoy. We tend to be able to sustain things that are pleasurable rather than when we're operating from fear or trying to force ourselves to go against our nature. So beyond it just being more likely to go better, you're here anyhow. You're going to be in that process, putting in time, taking action. So why not enjoy it? Why not delay gratification and say, oh, I'm going to be happy when I reach my goal? Why not have a good time while you're actually doing it? So a lot of us like games, and I encourage you to consider coming up with ways to, as you're taking action towards your goal, coming up with ways for it to be a little bit more like a game. And that's where the progress maps can actually be kind of handy, where you can come up with different meanings for each of the swirls. Each swirl, of course, represents an action that you take toward your goal. So in the conversation that I was having with this mapper about saving up money for her 3 months of living expenses, we were talking about opportunities for her to have fun with it and come up with little challenges for herself or ways to win just through the course of her day, right? So, one of the things that we came up with, or actually, pardon, she had come up with, and we just discussed it, was her rewarding herself when she put something on her wish list instead of impulsively buying it. Like, I don't know if anyone's like me, but I go to Targets and it's like, oh, I had no idea how much I need hand sanitizer. It's like, or whatever random things when you're just cruising around with your card, or I'll be on Amazon and then I'll, remember that I don't have refills for my pens, like whatever. I mean, these are not the sexiest examples of impulse buys. Nonetheless, when you notice yourself about to spend money on something that is not supporting your goal, say financial goal, then it's an opportunity for you to make that into a game. Like you get a swirl for that. She get a swirl for reading books that she already has versus purchasing new ones. She would get a swirl if she only bought coffee twice that week or whatever. You can come up with any number of ways to use your creativity and think of things that would be interesting or motivating for you. I encourage you to, I know this term is very cliche, but to think outside the box and the sort of expected methods of going toward a goal and come up with things that you actually enjoy. And this reminds me of kind of another lens to look through this whole going after your goal kind of process. And that is through the human light types. For any of you who are like, human what? That is, human light types are something that I've created. You can find them on mapyourprogress.com, as well as a quiz to help you figure out what your light type is. And the light types are a series of distinctions that I came up with that are essentially a tool to help us get clear on what is most meaningful and motivating to each one of us. We all have the opportunity to contribute, to make a difference, to do something meaningful with our life. I refer to that as bringing light into the world. I believe that humans at our best, we can be sources of light in the world and be constructively creative and giving things to others that benefit them. So a lot of different ways to do that. There are 9 different human light types, and they represent different ways of making a difference, different ways of bringing light into the world. And so what does that have to do with making progress more fun and a little bit sexier? It comes down to what would be most satisfying and rewarding an experience for you. So like, let's say you have this financial goal, right? And you want to take actions that are a bit more interesting or meaningful to you. You could consider what your light type is and then have those particular actions be aligned with that. So for example, I am a lighthouse, and that is my human light type. What that means is that I am most satisfied and happiest when I am sharing my life in service of other people. So when I take my experiences from having weathered storms or various challenges and things, and I use them to connect with other people, to reach out and provide hope and inspiration and guidance and say, hey, I know it's hard. I've been there and this is what I did, and let me show you. And if you imagine like the visual of a lighthouse and beaming out into a dark ocean, providing some navigation, some comfort, some inspiration, that is what I am happiest doing as a human lighthouse, which is why I created this business, which is why I'm a progress coach, which is why everything is based off my own experience and conversations that I've had with other people. So for me, if I'm going after a financial goal, I want to share that goal. So if you are a lighthouse as well, I would encourage you to look for ways that each of the next right steps you take are aligned with sharing your story with others. It could be as simple as using Facebook, honestly, like just sharing, hey, this is my goal. This is what I'm doing. I'm trying this, and let me report back and tell you what's going on. Let me write up a little blog post about it. Let me put up something on Instagram. Documenting and sharing what you've learned is usually like catnip for lighthouses. Okay, so let me use another example. Lamps, lamp lights, human lamps. They are very much about their family and the people that belong to them. And they are happiest and most satisfied when they are contributing directly to their family, spending time with them, doing something with them. So I would encourage any lamps out there, when you're going after your goal, look for ways that your next right steps can be about your family, whether you're like literally spending time together. So, for a lamplight, for example, if you have a financial goal, instead of, say going out and spending $100 on, dinner and movies, to plan a night at home with the family. Maybe pitch a tent in the living room, have popcorn, and watch an old movie and reminisce on times that you've had as a family or when the kids were younger. Like, that's going to be an action step that would save you spending that money, that's going to be much more meaningful and gratifying to you. So there are different ways that we can use what is meaningful to us to our advantage when we're going after these goals. One more other thing I want to consider when looking at making the pursuit of your goals a little bit more interesting is consider using treats. Treats is a term that Gretchen Rubin uses in her amazing book called Better Than Before. I'm very much a fan of that book. I nerd out pretty hard about it. And she gives some really great advice on how to come up with habits that work for you. There's a lot of really useful distinctions in there. And she goes through a whole bunch of stuff. And the first time that I read that book, actually, I started to get kind of cranky because I felt like Gretchen was calling me out on all of my shit. And I'm like, no, okay, listen, you're shining a light on every single one of my coping mechanisms and ways that I procrastinate or fool myself into thinking that what I'm doing is somehow not undermining my goals. And that sucks. So it wasn't until we got to the chapter on treats that I was like, all right, Gretchen, I forgive you. And okay, I might be on board with what you're doing. Treats are things that you give yourself to reward action that you've taken. I would hope that coloring in a swirl after taking a next right step is a little bit of a treat for you. Admittedly, it's probably not the most satisfying. It's not like getting really good chocolate kind of treatiness. And if you have a goal that's around food, then really good chocolate is probably not a good treat option for you. But looking at things that you can do for yourself to give yourself a treat for having taken an action, for having made a conscious decision to do something different that is in support of your goal, I highly recommend. One of my treats for myself is getting People Magazine. People Magazine, for me, for whatever reason, it's just kind of like a not so guilty pleasure. And so I will reward myself for getting, a whole bunch of actions done and getting myself a People Magazine at the end of the week. It could be anything that for you feels great. So looking for ways that you can treat yourself having taken the action or while you were taking the action. I'll give another example. This happened this past summer, where for the first time it occurred to me that the pile of personal administrative that I had on my desk, where, I had to call the insurance company, and I think there might have been something tax related. It's seriously the boring, mundane, adulty stuff that precious few of us actually like dealing with. I decided, you know what? I'm going to go to the beach and I'm going to make the phone calls that I need to make, which will likely result with me being on hold for probably 30 plus minutes at least. I'm going to go make those phone calls sitting in my favorite beach chair down by the water, which is exactly what I did. And I'm like, this is brilliant. This is such a good idea. So, for me, it was a way of taking something that was, an action that needed to be taken, that was in support of other things that I was doing. Sorry, guys, my nose is itchy. Anyhow, and making it a much more interesting or pleasurable experience. Looking for those ways to be creative and combining things that you don't really love so much, but are important actions to be taken to reach your goal, with things that you love much more or that are more interesting, or maybe taking and making kind of unexpected combinations. Okay. So one of the other things that had come up in this conversation that I was talking about earlier with this mapper who's saving 3 months of living expenses, where we were looking at those different actions that she could take that would free up more money to go toward her savings goal. So most of us have patterns that we get into, ways of spending our money, and we have kind of behaviors that we're used to doing, and that's our sort of financial normal. And for those of you that have financial goals, oftentimes you're trying to disrupt that normal pattern and change it in such a way that allows for you to put more cash towards your goal more quickly. And so we were looking at, okay, what are other things that she can be doing on a day-to-day basis besides, putting money when it comes into her account, sending that off as, putting it into the savings account right away. I mean, there are some kind of obvious sort of best practices, rules, things that you've probably heard before when it comes to finances and so forth. But there's also opportunities to try some other things out. And again, try and make it a little bit of a game for yourself. So I come up with something that I just launched yesterday. It's called the 10 Swirl Experiment Money Edition, because it is 10 swirls that are, of course, about money, and more specifically, spending less of it and allowing for more of it to go toward your financial goals, be it saving or paying off debts, whatever those are for you. There are different behaviors that you can take that, again, support your savings-minded lifestyle, if you will. So in addition to, this idea of, say, instead of impulsively buying something, putting it on your wish list, or maybe you add it to a Pinterest board, there are some other ideas that I'd come up with that I wanted to share. So if you go to mapyourprogress.com, I have just kind of reordered things on the site. So you'll notice up at the main navigation, there's a place that says free gifts. And if you click on that, then you will see the 10 Swirl Experiment Money Edition. And the idea is to experiment with these 10 different next right steps that you can take. I outline them in the guide, so you go get it and download it to see all the details. But I go into a bit of detail about each of these 10 things that you can try, and bit of an instruction on how to do that, what the victory is, and I include a 10 swirl heart map so that you can practice coloring in the swirls and using that as a visual that you could say, put up on the wall, put up by your desk, put on the refrigerator, wherever, where you can see that visual of those 10 swirls. You can see what each of the swirls is, the next right step that it represents, and then experiment with it. Try it, like make a game of it. And I hope that when you look at those 10 things, you might be inspired to try some others. In the doing of them, you may be inspired to try some other idea. And by all means, go do that and then tell me about it. Because the more of these ideas that we have to share with each other, the better. Okay, so that is our newest experiment, newest download that you can get at mapyourprogress.com in the free gifts section. And I'm excited to see what you guys do with that. I had mentioned at the top that when I initially had been describing this as fun, a little bit sexier, I wasn't necessarily being like literally sexier. However, in a conversation I was having today, I was reminded of this thing that I did last year for Valentine's Day, and lo and behold, it's February 10th. So this is right in time for Valentine's Day 2017. And that is similar idea, actually, to what we're talking about today. Where a year ago, my friend Mariah and I, she has an amazing company called The Fantasy Box. Go check it out. It's really interesting, and she does very, very cool stuff. And so anyhow, she and I were talking about ways to use the maps to help couples who wanted to consciously bring more romance and a sense of feeling loved into their relationship. And so I was having a conversation today, like an hour ago, with a mapper who had bought a progress map for him and his wife. It's a Valentine's Day gift. And the intention is that each of those swirls are going to represent an action that either one of them takes consciously to show the other person love. So each of them, will have a color, and they will choose to do something loving for one another, which could, of course, involve physical touch and could be intimate in that way. And then they color in the swirl. And I love that because it ties into what Mariah and I did last year. And that was looking at how can you use the progress maps to intentionally take more acts of love to strengthen the bond that you have with your partner or improve the quality of your relationship, and map your romance. So at mapyourprogress.com. If you go mapyourprogress.com/romance, you will get to the blog that Mariah and I did. We did a great little video there. And then you will also be able to download um, the PDF that I created, which has, I guess, about 20 or 25 different ideas, next right steps, fun and creative, interesting things that you could use to map your romance. And one of them, this is just off the top of my head, that I loved because one of my favorite love languages, this is, I don't know if I just said that, but these 20 and 25 things were inspired in part by Gary Chapman's 5 Love Languages. If you are not familiar, go to 5lovelanguages.com and take the quiz. It's super fascinating. But it's this idea that we all experience love in different ways. And just as we experience what success feels like or is meaningful in different ways, we also experience love. So one of the love languages is, of course, physical touch. And this is common, especially for men. This is usually one of their primary love languages. So they need to be touched to feel loved, right? So anyhow, the idea is to consider your next right steps and actions based on what those love languages are. So for me, my primary love language is quality time. And one of the ideas that I had suggested with mapping your romance is to, have a slow dance in the kitchen. I don't know if I saw this like in a commercial when I was young or like a movie but I have this thing about, just it being like just a random Monday night, where you're like, you've done dinner and you're doing the dishes and it's like, whatever. And then one of you turns on music and maybe you flip the lights low. You could even go by the light of the refrigerator door, whatever, and just have a slow dance. And I even made you guys a playlist on Spotify because I love making playlists and that's a thing I do. And that even is linked to in the article. So it's right there. It's embedded. So anyhow, mapyourprogress.com/romance. Just rolled my R's for all of my Spanish friends out there. Awesome. So yeah, that's the whole idea that I'd love to leave you with, is that making progress, reaching goals, it does not have to be boring. It does not have to be a grind. Please have fun with this. Please don't tell yourself that it's going to be worth it in the end if you just have it be boring and hard and painful in the during. I don't recommend that at all. I don't think that that is sustainable, and it's certainly not very much fun. So I encourage you guys to, whatever your goal is, go for it from a place of experimentation, of adventure, of creativity. Like, well, let's see what happens if we do this, and how about that, and just trying things and aligning it with a way that is meaningful to you. That is my wish for you. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. I'm going to include the links for the downloads. So if you're watching the replay, then you can go ahead and grab those for yourself. And then next week, I will be back at 3 o'clock on Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific. And I'm going to be sharing about what excuses really mean. I feel like excuses get kind of a bad rap, and it's something that's kind of a pet peeve of mine because I hate it when people say like, oh, well, that's just an excuse, or, oh, I've been making so many excuses. We're human people and we have reasons and a logic for the things that we do. And so I have a whole lot to say about excuses and what they're really about. And I'm excited to share about that with you next week. So have an amazing week until then. Hope you come by Map of Progress and grab some of the free gifts and start experimenting. All right, dears. See you soon. Bye.